meeting, September 13, 2023 at noon at the Bell Building. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And the first on the agenda is citizens' comments, and this is an opportunity for citizens to address the commission on agenda items or other items they wish to bring to the attention of the commission or staff. Comments may be made in person via emailing publicworks@cityoflewiston.org or by calling 208-746-1316, and that extension number is 6, and leaving a message. Comments submitted by email or phone will be forwarded to the Public Works Advisory Commission. If you would like your comment to be read aloud during the meeting, please so indicate that in your message. Any citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, item 3. All items on the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these issues unless a member so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered under section 5, items removed from the consent agenda. So we have one thing, approval of August 9th, 2023 meeting minutes. Do we have anyone who wants to pull that or make a motion to approve them?
I'll make a motion to approve the August 9th minutes.
I'll second.
Been moved by Laura and seconded by Kevin. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now our active agenda for item 4. The first one is Clearwater Composting, Yard Waste, and Biosolids Agreement. An overview of the Yard Waste and Biosolids Agreement, Resolution 2014-11 with Clearwater Composting. Director Johnson.
Okay, so generally, I kind of give you as much background as I can on this. So sanitation in Public Works, the majority of what we do is under contract. So we have multiple contracts with several entities, Sunshine Disposal being the big one, so they do the collection and actual physical disposal of the waste. We also have contracts with Lewiston County, which is where we take our municipal waste. I'm trying to think of all the other contractors we have, but the one that we're specifically focusing on today is Clearwater Composting. And they have two roles in what they serve. One is the yard waste, which is collected by Sunshine Disposal, and the biosolids. So biosolids, yard waste is pretty clean, or pretty easy to describe. It's, leaf, yard clippings, leaves, anything that's compostable that comes out of your yard. Biosolids are a byproduct of the wastewater treatment process. So everything goes down the sewer pipes. It comes through our wastewater treatment plant. The last bit is what's called biosolids. And so that needs to be disposed of in depending on different manners of how you treat your waste and what's available for disposal. Anything from landfilling, composting, or land application where you apply it to a field. There's a whole separate world of what biosolids is and what you can do. I'm not going to necessarily get into that today, but that's generally what Clearwater Composting does. The reason I'm bringing it before this group today is I am going to be presenting to the council at their October work session and kind of update them on pending contract issues that are looming out there for sanitation. First would be the contract with Clearwater Compost. The second would be the negotiation or soon to expire contract with disposal at Lewiston County. And third would be kind of the state of the world when it comes to recycling. That's something that has fluctuated dramatically over the last couple of years. So those three things I wanted to update the council. I don't think we'll get all three things in front of this board, but we are going to get to the big one, which is Clearwater Composting. So Clearwater Compost is out there towards Mill Road, right by Lapway Road where it forks off. It's kind of tucked in back there in a bunch of the industrial areas. You'll hear us talk they've been named many different things, from Latah Sanitation, Clearwater Composting, Inland North Waste, I think is their current name. For this purpose, we'll probably just call them the contractor who handles our composting. As I think it was introduced, the contract goes back to March of 2014. And there's like any other contract that we have that's a long-term contract, there's measures in there to keep up with CPI, fuel costs, things like that. So that contract is adjusted annually to reflect CPI. Now, everything that we do is typically about a 10-year contract. So if you notice, 2014, it's now pending on this 2024. So the contract stipulates that we need to notify Clearwater Compost or the contractor by the end of this calendar year. So that would be December 31st, 2023, if we're going to extend that contract. If we do not notify them that we are going to extend that contract, then the contract expires the next December 31st of 2024. So a lot has changed since that contract was issued in 2014, specifically on the biosolids. We've updated our whole wastewater treatment plant. We still have biosolids. We still have relatively the same volume, still makeup. It's handled a little different. When it comes into the pipe and leaves the pipe, a lot of things have changed, but the actual product has not changed. As I said earlier, there are a lot of options for what we could or couldn't do for composting our biosolids. And the technology continues to evolve. We've had we're in an agricultural area, so land application is something to consider, as is the contract with Soton County. What we're going, we could just landfill them. There's an option that we're looking into right now. Our biosolids are about, I want to say, they're still very wet. So once you're done with the biosolids, they kind of come out in clumps. We can run them through a dryer, so then we can further compact the density of them, get the moisture out of them, and then land apply them or landfill them, which would then, there's an investment on the front end to buy dryers for the biosolids, but then the payback would be probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 years. So that's something that we consider. The issue is they kind of come together. So you can't just get rid of your biosolids and say, all right, we found another contract, we're moving on. We still have the yard waste. And so there's several things that we can consider right now. One is we let the contract expire. We notify them that we are not going to continue the contract. We notify them that we're going to go out for an open RFP, and we start all over. We do another 10-year contract if the current contractor is the contractor that is most qualified and can meet our requirements. We'll go right back to them, sign another 10-year contract, and move forward. Another is that we say we can extend the contract. Right now, if you asked me, I'm leaning towards asking for maybe a short-term, a 2-year extension, just because there's so much going on with the biosolids that we need to vet out with the DEQ and some other, University of Idaho's interested in working with us on some of this stuff. So I'm meeting with the mayor on Friday, and I'm kind of gonna nudge him to see if we could negotiate a short-term, maybe like a 2-year extension to get us out of the clear of the biosolids and kind of negotiate with Sunshine and see if there's any benefits in cost savings in how we handle the yard waste. So that's the direction I'm leaning towards. Or the other option is we just ask them, propose something. We want an extension. What do we want to do? So those are the 3 general proposed options. I'm sure there's actually more. When I go to the council at the work session, I'm going to get in a little bit more detail as far as history, the rates, where they've gone, the tonnages, what we've seen as far as a change, which it's been fairly consistent. Like I said, between the biosolids and the yard waste, you have high producing years and low producing years, but generally they're within 20% higher low, so it's a pretty consistent market. I think that's generally the high points. The actual contract was in your packet. So I guess I'm gonna open it up now in the interest of time. If there's any questions, conversations, where you want to take it from here?
Any questions? Kevin?
Go ahead.
So, I mean, in terms of the contract, you talked about a 2-year extension. You know, in the contract, it talks about, the lowest one it shows here is a 5-year extension.
Yeah.
Is that just something that we want to try to negotiate with them?
I think everything at this point, I mean, it's an open-ended, and maybe it is what we've tried to do in our sanitation contracts is to try and get them all on the same year cycle.
No,
And so,
yeah.
right now, we're grouping them all together, and I can't remember where this one is off. And, you know, the latitude to do some of these negotiations may not go anywhere.
Right.
So I'm very appreciative of you giving a summary at the beginning because there was a couple consideration items there that I have some follow-up questions with. So first off, with the upgrade to the sanitation plant, was there any update to the filter cake operation? In other words, was there any more efficiency so that were you producing less, were you producing more? You know, where are you at with production based on that, or what is your expected production level of that is kind of the first question. Second, is it done internally or is a third-party contractor doing your filter cake processing, you know, with all the machines and everything and trying to get the reduction down? Because obviously you want less moisture in there because then the tonnage is less. So yes, that's very advantageous. And then third, I don't know if you're aware, but in certain states and counties, there's been some huge concerns and problems whereby lawsuits and things have come around with regards to land application near communities. And so it's a huge issue in certain parts of the United States because of the problems there have been health problems associated with biosolids, and some areas are considering, even though it's, you know, has incredible nutrient value, they're considering banning it altogether because of the communities and things like that. Those are my 3 questions to start.
Yeah, I in a previous life did some work with biosolids, and it's very interesting that a lot of people don't recognize it's an organic process to treat waste and everything that we consume. Everything from caffeine to Viagra is not an organic compound, so it passes right through the system. So there is a huge controversy out there of when you land apply some of these biosolids, it is the full spectrum from caffeine to birth control, everything that you're applying. And so I know generally they're not allowed to land apply for edible product or edible crops. To go back to your first question, so we've upgraded, so we have 2 screw presses that operate right now. And I'm not gonna claim that I know exactly how the process works. We have not gotten the spec in which that was designed to, as far as the moisture removal, and that's why I can't give you the specific number. We're much higher than what it's spec'd at, so we've been trying different polymers through the manufacturer to try and get it to meet spec. So to be determined where we're at, but it is more efficient than what we had before. We did not have these screw presses, so it was a higher volume. But what's interesting about the savings, we're not seeing the savings because we're now spending more money on polymer and less money on electricity. So take that with what you will. So we're still trying to fine tune how we can get that cake drier. In fact, that's
For the flocculant,
Yep,
the polymer? Okay.
to get it bound and get the moisture out of it. We're roughly running 3 dump trucks a day.
Okay.
So
It's done internally, it's not?
it's all done internally.
Okay.
Yep. And what other they're missing?
Just internally, the volume, the moisture content for the dryers and the screw presses, and then you said it's internally, not as a third-party contractor handling it.
Yep. We're with the dryers, and we're talking to the manufacturer right now. And as I said, I can't remember the price, but I did price out the payback, and it was 5 to 10 years. and it would get you up to 85 to 90% removal of moisture. So it's a order of magnitude higher, so we would probably get that down to maybe one dump truck a day, or maybe every other day. So it's a significant amount of savings, and if you look at the price of what for the tipping fees there, it's pretty comparable to go to the landfill. It's, not as environmental friendly as composting it, but as we already talked about, the controversy with biosolids, that's where that savings would be, is less handling of less material.
Okay. So going back to Kevin's question then, possibly just keeping it at 5 years while some of those are, because 2 years, I mean, that comes up quickly to, by the time you're trying to get the polymers, all that other bit, I'm kind of, maybe we do just keep it for the 5 as all those things are working behind the scenes,
Yeah.
because if you can get it down drier,
Yep.
that makes a massive savings, and you said payback would be 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. And I guess real quick on and this is Sean McCabe, who represents Sunshine Disposal, so he's not just a member of the public, he's a VIP, but a lot of this is gonna be determined on what the contractor's rate is going to be, because as Kevin already called out, there's terms within the contract. They have met the terms of the contract as far as escalation, but I get the impression that they may be looking at a significant increase with a new contract. And there's probably a price point where we're not gonna be able to see eye to eye. So I'm not sure, this is a little premature, because I haven't had any conversations with them necessarily to see what they're going to be looking for. It's kind of, their business has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. So there's the operation standpoint, but then there's also just the negotiation of contracts too.
Is there a difference between the biosolids and the yard waste with regards to that? Because the yard waste is extremely beneficial to the community.
Yep, and that's exactly it, is they kind of work hand in hand in the composting process. And it is, the city handles all of our own we truck our own biosolids, so there's very little interaction with anybody other than where we drop it off at Clearwater Compost, where Sunshine Disposal is the collection agency, and they handle basically everything for the yard waste. So yeah, they will deliver it wherever we tell them to. We're the customers, so where it needs to go. To remove the yard waste, and then we get into SDI's contract. If we just say we're not going to do it, which I don't think we're interested in doing, because that would have all kinds of different ramifications in our sanitation collection. But that's
Well, not just the sanitation, but on that side, it's also when you start removing some of those types of services, or you have to pay for it or something like that, you'll start seeing illegal dumping happening significantly.
So a couple of other questions about the contract. So if we do an extension for 5 years, does that continue at the present rate?
I don't think so. I think when we talk
That
about
needs to be renegotiated.
that has to be renegotiated.
And then how many contractors do we have available to shop around to?
Not a lot.
Okay.
Not a
that's
lot.
what I
There's
thought.
regionally, within the Quad Cities here, we can shop around, but in the valley, I'm not aware of. Eco is now gone. There's some possibilities I know that I would like to explore, and that goes back to the 5-year. And we've kind of had a cooperative between the 2 universities and the 4 cities and the 4 counties to talk about, and it's not just yard waste, it's recycling, it's full solid waste disposal. The trick in sanitation in any of this is consolidating your volume. And each entity by itself does not produce enough volume to be a big player, but if we could kind of bring our group together and kind of figure out where we can shop, we may get better deals.
So in regards to extending or putting it out as an RFP, what are our risks and rewards there that you understand?
Like any, like anything, you're at the mercy of the market, so we could put it out to RFP and we get one submittal and it's the price that we would have negotiated anyway, or we go to negotiate and the price is excessive, and the council or the public says, that's highway robbery, we're not gonna pay that, but we don't, and so that's where, looking at this, there's so many things that are in flux internally as far as the biosolids and the yard waste. I would like to, and I think we could probably work out a contract, but like I said, I'm only one side of the negotiation to see what happens with that.
And wasn't there like a mid-contract renegotiation for something, I seem to remember before I was on the council, there was, can't remember, I wanna say, was it recycling?
Oh, well, the recycling kind of fluctuates.
Right, but I mean, it was still mid-contract, I mean,
I think that's when it went really high.
something to that effect,
There
yeah.
was a crisis, there was a
Yeah.
crisis out there, so because of the recyclables, every city, county in the nation basically had to renegotiate at that point.
And then what is the life expectancy and maintenance costs of dryers?
Like anything else out there, I'm not sure what the life it would be similar to the screw presses that they feed off, so I would assume the way we run things, good 30 years.
Okay, yeah, cause I mean, if we start getting, our reward at 8 to 10 years, and then we have to replace it
Yeah.
in 10
Yeah, I
years,
see what
that's
you're saying.
not, but if
Yeah.
it's 30
Yeah.
years, then I would see a value in that.
Yeah, and playing in that, I only put the initial capital costs in there. I did not, I'm sure there's parts and stuff that wears out that will be replaced, that would have to be considered too.
But still, I mean, that's, okay.
Any other questions?
I did real quick.
add?
Yes, would you like to?
Where are we at per ton with the CPIs and everything?
Currently,
And then we pay garbage, through the, is the cities and county subsidizing all the yard waste at this point, or how's that working?
that I don't have an answer off the top.
I'm just curious because of how the language was written, it's a little odd, so that's why.
Yeah, the biosolids right now are up to $59.50 a ton. And so,
Interesting.
yeah, so the tipping fee over at Asotin County is just right at $50. I think it's maybe a little under $50 a ton, so. That's the biosolid side. That's $53.67 for the yard waste. Plus a gate fee of $1.27 per trip. Total, what we pay annually for biosolids is anywhere from $150,000 to about $180,000 a year. And then for the yard waste,
And that's not even, because you haven't even, the sanitation plant just got upgraded and you're still playing with the flocculants and the
Yep,
pommelons
yep,
to
yep.
even get it down.
yep. And then the yard waste is 200 to, looks like the high was 290 year. There are some smaller contributors like parks and streets that we haul, and like $950 a year. Parks and Rec is about $2,000 to $5,000 a year, and residential self-haul is a low of 173 and a high of 260.
Any other questions on this? Okay, shall we move along to item B, the 2020 Lewiston Transportation Plan? It's an overview of the 2020 Lewiston Transportation Plan Resolution 2021-12, adopted in 2021. Is Luke here?
Luke had a family illness, so he is not able to be here, so.
Okay, you're on again.
Pinch hitting, you've got me and you've got Alana Bailey here.
Okay, and
who's,
Alana.
Alana is our transportation engineer. I don't know if you've met her yet.
Nope.
But,
I'll let you keep talking while I try to find the plan on here.
okay, so, so I think we've talked quite a bit in the past. Surface transportation is the, one of the more unique, I guess, departments that we run within Public Works, where water, wastewater, even stormwater operate as enterprise funds. And so transportation is not a typical enterprise funds. Its funding sources come from a various amount of sources, everything from property taxes to gas tax. We do rely on a lot of allocations from the state and the feds, and also grants. So given that there's quite a bit of funding sources, and I call it the color of money, because there's allocations for what's called street preservation. You can't just go build a brand new road with street preservation money, or you get a safety grant, you can't go use that to go chip seal a road. So there's a lot of planning that goes into the transportation network, just because of the funding sources and the complicated nature of bringing it all together. I mean, there's physically the budgetary, the money side, but then you've got, you've got underground utilities, you've got ADA components, environmental justice, and then of course there's just so many people who not a lot of people have opinions about sewer mains, because when the toilet flushes, everybody's happy, but there are more opinions per capita on transportation than there is in anything else. And so,
Garbage is a second.
Garbage maybe.
oh yeah, it would.
This, been there.
So, we adopted I guess it's not a brand new one, but it feels like it's brand new, a transportation plan. It's, is adopted in 2021. And so there's two components to it. There's the transportation plan, which will give you the overview as soon as it loads here. And that outlines kind of what the general process is, a high overview of the transportation network. And then there's the capital improvement plan, which is attached to that. And the capital improvement plan is basically the ranking of the projects that we see fit for investment. And that is a dynamic document. The transportation plan is set. I mean, we will update it every 5 years and maybe do a new one every 10 to 15 years, depending on funding and how things have gone through. If you completed all your projects, you wanna get a fresh transportation plan. But the capital improvement plan, you're gonna tick through those projects hopefully quickly, not quickly, but your top 10 should change over the course of time. And maybe your priority when you adopted it 3 years ago, you get a brand new big box store, and so this project was very important at the time, but now we have a demand for a new project, and so that intersection or street is now number 2, or 2 years ago it was number 20. So there's a whole public engagement. It's a process that typically starts in February, and so those are the two components of the transportation plan that we work off of. So now that it is loaded, I will stop talking.
Okay, so I don't really have anything prepared, so I was just gonna walk through it. If there's any questions as I go, please speak up. I'm just gonna walk through kind of what the plan is. I know we only have about 25 minutes and people need to get out of here, so I will go fairly quickly. Okay, so maybe walking through the table of contents is the first step. So the first chapter is, what is the plan? And so I think Justin just kind of explained what it is. We need it so that we can know what projects we need to do throughout the city. It's important to have it updated fairly regularly, probably every 5 years or so. I'm sorry, I'm reading.
There's the one behind you too, I don't know if that's.
Looks kind of weird, I'm sorry. Okay, so 3, I'm gonna skip 2 for now. So 3 is basically, it's going through what today's system looks like. It's the existing system, what our network of streets, network of pedestrian facilities, bikes, it's kind of everything that is transportation related, including public transportation, which is transit. The 4th chapter is gonna be about projecting what we need in the future. So it looks at the growth, it looks at the safety, and determines what you have now and what you should have in the next 20 years. 5th chapter is Okay, so we know what we should have, how do we plan to get there? What are the projects, how do you prioritize them? And then all these appendices on the side, so the plan's really graphic in nature, there's not a lot of pages to the plan. A lot of it is in the appendices for the details there. So A is pretty clear, goals and objectives. B is a review of every document that kind of feeds this, so it's a lot of studies, a lot of reports, a lot of data. Appendix C, that's also self-explanatory. We had a stakeholders group, so we talked through this project as we went. D is what we call the PPG, because we love acronyms. It's the Public Participation Guide. Before going into writing this transportation plan, we didn't have like a guide for how we're going to outreach and get the public involved. So we decided we needed to get something in writing, how we're gonna do this on a regular basis to get public input. Appendix E, it's just going through data, the traffic volumes and operations. F is, again, kind of data, looking at the safety analysis, seeing what the high crash locations were. G is just some standard things you might look at for doing improvements if there is a safety concern or a congestion concern. H is funding, which is just grants and local funding, and it goes through what the options might be for funding projects. I is, again, that was a big part of this plan, is the PPC. This is the project prioritization criteria. Prior to doing this, it was almost between staff and city council, whoever picking, oh, we should do this project, we should do that project. This helped us be able to rank them in a methodical way. So we knew what the projects were, and now we're able to score them so that we're not having someone's, one person's input rank higher than somebody else's input. We can always change how we fund them, but this at least tells us how it should be ranked based off some specific criteria. And then the last one is the capital improvement plan. So it takes all this stuff, takes the public involvement, the criterias, and it just ranks everything, and it's how we try to look for funding annually. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So I think we're gonna skip one. So here is kind of an interesting slide. Hopefully you can read it. This walks through how we're gonna engage the public each year. So the public has a chance to provide their input throughout the year, but this walks through specific stages of it. I can't quite see it, but I think it's in October, we start to update the plan and ask for the public or for any agencies out there to let us know if they have new projects they want us to include into it. We include all those projects and we update the plan, take out anything that's already been completed, and we put it out for public comment. The public has a 30-day period for which we will take in their input, try to incorporate back into the plan, and then we take it to city council requesting their approval. And I know I skipped some steps because I can't quite see it, I apologize. But that's the general gist of how we do it every year. It's about a 4-month process by the time from where we start to where we end.
You said every year, right?
Every year, yes. Okay, so chapter 3 is the existing system. So this is, like I said, we try to make this a really graphic plan so it's easy to look at. So this is the existing roadway system. Basically, it shows all of our arterials, collectors. We're showing all the signalized intersections. This is what we got generally showing how City of Lewiston network operates.
Oh, just real quick, what is the criteria between a principal arterial and a minor arterial? What are your definitions or criteria for that level? And what would alter it from a principal to a minor, or a principal, from a minor to a principal?
There's kind of a federal guideline for how they are, and it's based off how much traffic you have. I don't have that in front of me, so I do not know.
Okay, but it's based, is that, because I noticed there was a person out doing some traffic counts, so are you doing it based on those, or is it traffic counts through areas?
Yes, but we don't update it annually like that, because it's kind of a process to get them updated, but it is based off traffic counts at some point in time.
Okay.
So here's kind of the same map, but just showing you the different speeds in the system. So most of our system is 25 miles per hour, with a few that are 45, 35, and some 20s in there. But I don't think the 20s are showing yet, because that predates this plan, likely.
Do we have any 20 speed limit signs anywhere, Dustin?
Just downtown,
And that makes sense.
it's Main Street, and I don't think D is, I think it's
Schools.
25.
Well, school zones,
the
and those are
schools, yeah.
specifically signed for school zones, but the only place downtown, or is the Main Street, that's 20.
Is there spots up in the orchards that are 20?
Not,
But not labeled?
not, other than just school zones.
Just schools.
So I have a question, back to her question as far as the minor and principal. Do they take into account what those roads lead to, specifically like the hospital? You know, because on that last one, I know 11th Avenue was designated a minor, but I mean, I see it as I could be wrong, but I see it as a major crosstown thoroughfare to get to St. Joe's.
I think it is only traffic data. I don't think it has anything to do with the destination.
So right now, you said 11th, it's designated as a collector, and what it would bump it up
It's
to a minor?
It's a secondary or a
It's-
minor arterial.
11th is right now purple, which is a collector, and it's not, so I was kind
And I
of
would-
interesting how it would be bumped up to like a minor, exactly.
And my only real concern has to do with winter and clearing the roads, because I know that the clearing the roads gets stacked in the priority of the road itself.
We use that as a basis, but there's the road designation, but then kind of concurrent with that is hospital, you know,
Yeah.
what is connecting to it. So that, when we set up our snow routes and emergency response,
So that's a separate thing.
So
Okay.
per the winter
Alright.
storm criteria, first priority is given to hospital routes and emergency services. So that's in their prioritization. Under the winter storm, first priority is arterials going into the hospitals.
Oh, so this one's showing the level of service. So level of services are ranked from A through F. With A being the best, not having much or having no congestion, and F being the worst, and it is highly congested. And it's color coded on there. I think that, actually, you're right. I should turn this way. I'll try to project my voice your direction though. So it looks like the overcapacity stuff we have in the magenta color, and anything that is not congested is in the green colors. And so you see that for both the network as well as the intersections. Intersections tend to be the spots that deteriorate before the streets do. That's where congestion usually happens. And you'll notice that Bryden is not showing up on here, and that's because it wasn't part of the analysis for this, because it was analyzed prior to this plan, so we didn't want to spend extra money to have it done again. It's included in the transportation plan as a project, just not in the analysis portion. Here, pavement condition, I'm not sure if you guys have talked about pavement condition at all, but this is kind of how, shows us, do we need to reconstruct, do we need to overlay? Is this in good shape? We don't need to do anything with it, but a chip seal for the next few years. Here's the pedestrian facility, so it's gonna show you where there's sidewalk, where there's not sidewalk, and where there's a shared use path that is something separate from the roadway. That can be for bikes as well as pedestrians.
Thanks, and no sidewalk?
Yes. So you'll notice the orchards is a lot of no sidewalk.
That makes sense.
Same thing here for bicycles, where we have the bicycle routes and things. I don't know if you guys have seen the bicycle master plan, that's one of the plans that fed this, so, just so you know. And the public transit system. I don't know if this is an updated map, my guess is not. It seems like they do change their stuff from time to time, but this was their map in 2020. So here in kind of the cloud format is the crash data. So this is pulled, so ITD is the keeper of all of our crash data. When there's crashes, the police department sends it to the data collector, which is ITD. And they keep track of everything that happens. So if it's really dense, that's what the darker blue colors is. You see that in more of the major corridors like 21st, Thane, Bryden. And then the purplish is few crashes.
And the fatal and serious.
Yeah, so fatal's the red cross on there.
Yeah, and this is because they've had that happen, or it could happen.
So this is stuff that has happened. This is conditions. So those are all fatal, and then the yellow ones are all serious. And we use this for applying for grants as well. There are some grants that specifically rely on fatal and serious injury data to get them. So this is the exact map we use, or really close to the exact map we use to get the grant stuff. So just showing you the crashes per vehicles on the street. So the bigger the dot, the more crashes per vehicles on that road. Okay, so then we move into what do we need? I don't think I'm gonna go through this. This is just talking about household data, census stuff. It's in there if you guys want to go back and look at it.
I just had one quick question on
we'll
that
go back.
page, since you're, on 15, it said land use growth, from 2010 to 2040. And I noticed the area next to 29th. Right now, I was just kind of curious, is that in plan to be developed by 2040 or not? Sometimes I know that they have, development planned in areas, but they may or may not develop it.
I do not know the answer to that. Yeah, I know we projected out where there was gonna be growth and where there was gonna be subdivisions, but I can't tell you exactly when we did this, what was projected out. Again, kind of the same thing. How is the land used? Is it gonna be commercial? Is it gonna be residential? What do we expect? And what's there? Okay, so this is going out, looking at land use, looking at what's there, what we expect is gonna be there, and adding a certain percentage of growth of what it should look like in 2040. What's the level, this is the level of service map that we talked about earlier from existing, this is what it'll look like in 2040. So you see kind of the same corridors are the highlighted ones, but there's also some added. Here is after their analysis of all the safety data, the crashes, these were the hot spots that kind of came out as for how many cars were there and how many crashes were there. This is where they thought we really should look at these locations for some kind of a safety improvement. And they make sense. Thane, that was the high crash area. Bryden Canyon, we've had some fatalities on there. That was a big one. So they make sense when you look at them. Bicycle stuff, same thing. This basically took the bicycle master plan and put all their proposed projects till 2040 in it. So that's just the map showing everything that we would like to see for bikes. And pedestrians. So this, again, is the map showing what's there and what we'd like to see done. The The highlighted circles, I believe, are the school circles. Yes, they are. So every school is the center of that dot. And so that's a half-mile radius from that location. So those are high priorities both in this plan, and there is an ADA transition plan that we did, I think 2 years ago, that had the same thing. Wanting to make those safe routes for students to get to school. Here's the, again, based on what we think the traffic is gonna look like, what the classifications could look like.
Question with regards to the future connections. In the plan, it says, however, not all connectors or plan connections are expected to be needed by 2040. So with the plan updates, is that something that you would be looking at every 5 years or something? Is it gonna be needed or not, or, you know, because connectors are very expensive to build, extremely expensive, versus, you know, dealing with regular pavement maintenance at this point, and then obviously some reconstruction projects that are gonna be taking. So, you know, just trying to figure out, you know, or is that, are those designed around developers, so would the developers then pay for those connector roads, and that would not be something on the city? So that's something that would come out in that updated plan to explain that sentence?
Yes, yeah, so that, that is gonna play with as growth and development happens, and so, yeah, you're right, some of these are gonna get ticked off with the reconstruction that we know we have, we're backlogged on for like a lot of our arterials that we're focusing on. A lot of this stuff, a lot of the growth is happening out in the east orchards, so as that's happening, that's gonna change this map 5 years from now with 2 or 3 or 4, however many new subdivisions out there, that's potentially gonna have some significant impacts on this map, as is the investments that we're gonna make on everything from pavement preservation to the reconstructs that we have.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes on this, and then you want me to touch on as I go through. I'll try to go through a little quicker.
You're in the most important area.
Okay, so, this kind of talks about, do
you have a question?
Nope.
Sorry, okay.
we overlay it? Do we chip seal it? Do we slurry seal it? Do we reconstruct it? So this talks about, our needs for preservation, and you can see the pictures in the corner. That's kind of what a good street looks like versus what we need to reconstruct in the bottom looks like.
This is my favorite page of the plan.
So, well, and so how often are you have pavement management system, so I'm very familiar with that, and you do have the pavement in, you know, condition. So how often are you going through that process of assessment? Because I know, you know, it's not cheap to, you know, to do that type of assessment and going through it. What is the timeline when you're
Well, right now, we have just completed a whole system-wide assessment. We haven't actually received the data yet, but we just completed, the MPO just paid for one. So that will help us. What I've seen when we do these is we do our own assessment, and sometimes you maybe aren't 100% accurate, I guess I would say, or overinvest in certain roads or corridors that when you do that reassessment, that resets the baseline.
Correct.
So you can truth out some of your numbers. I guess before I can give you a good answer, I wanna see how our system has been managed up to that date, and see if we have data that demonstrates what we've got. Cause I would say my assessment of the system is generally our locals, and even up to the collectors are in pretty decent shape. It's the arterials that are falling apart. When that data comes back and says I'm wrong, that means we have to change the way we're doing our pavement assessment system and maybe change the way we do it. I'm hoping I'm not wrong, but
Have you ever heard of a program or a company called Robotics? And it's a company where they do a camera system, and you can use city vehicles, you know, or garbage companies' vehicles, and they go through the routes through the city, and you get sort of real-time data, so you can do it once a month, you can do it 2 times a year, 4 times a year. They process the information, and so you can get more real-time data with regards to your pavement index. because sometimes you have contractors that maybe don't do such a good job and the road fails. It's supposed to be a 10-year road, and you can track all of those types of things a lot quicker. Or, like you said, some additional growth out in the neighborhood has caused it to fail faster than you know, because the pavement index, is so far few between. This is kind of a thing that you can do on an ongoing basis. So robotics is absolutely amazing. And what's also nice is that they take pictures of it, so in meetings, if somebody wants to pull it up, you can hit like a little thing and it brings up a picture of that roadway, so you can see how it's failing, because you're driving
Yeah.
constantly through those. So it's something to consider. It's absolutely the most amazing software program I've ever seen.
I've done a couple other, when I was in Suffolk County, I did a similar system like that, that would take the pictures and you could truth your numbers with it. We've looked into some of that, and, it's evolving technology, and there's a lot of data that's available for cheap with just a small buy-in for that, so I think that's something that we'd be looking into. And I will say, having done pavement assessments in the past, technology has evolved so much, even in the last 5 years. These studies are so much cheaper than, used to have to do them by hand and do the analysis, and now it's all automated, so it's a lot cheaper than what it was, so.
Yeah.
We have a example of what you were saying, is it Thane on 21st Street, that the way they built it was not
Oh,
today's standards?
yeah, I think that's a great, that's a whole nother topic. Cause I would really like to talk about that, because what we find, particularly in the orchards, and not even exclusive to the orchards, but like 21st Street, where that section that you see with pavement, aggregate, and subgrade, there is no aggregate base. It's not even, I wouldn't even call it subgrade that we have. We have thick asphalt on top of river rock. And so we have these roads, some of them are 30 years old, and it's a miracle that they've survived. And so when you come in and say, oh, just chip seal it, or just come in there and do a mill and overlay, there's nothing to mill out. It's rotten. And so it's a complete reconstruct. And, it's same thing, Bryden is a great one. It was never intended to handle the heavy load truck traffic that it sees every day. So that's where you get all that rutting. And when it wasn't built to a right standard to start out with, it just compounds.
Is that something we can bring back as a separate topic?
I think it would be really a valuable tool in our toolbox for the public to have some good pictures and representations of what you're dealing with as a public works, and why it's so hard to keep our roads in the condition that people want to see it in.
We can bring that up on D, future agenda
Okay.
items.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do that, okay. And move along on this one.
Well, I'm looking at the time, and I heard Bill said they need to leave at noon, or at 1. Do you want to table this and pick it up at a future one, knowing we're at chapter 4?
I'm okay with that, people need to go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's too important to rush it.
no, I agree.
Fine with that.
Okay.
All right, so we will table the 2020 Lewiston Transportation Plan until the next meeting, or do we have the date you want to?
Just do it in the October meeting.
October meeting, okay. And so we'll move on from there. Items moved from the consent agenda, there was none, so then on to 6, which is upcoming meetings. So our next regular meeting is October 11, 2023. And I'd like to know how many of the commissioners plan to attend?
I'm here.
I'm planning on it.
Okay, all right. We have accounted time. Okay, then moving on to unfinished and new business, we have a vacant seat. Now, the commission must decide if they want to revisit previous applicants, or if they want to keep the vacant seat open until filled. So I guess that means we go back and look at the applicants that we had reviewed already.
Whatever happened with that, they just.
We had.
I was gone, so I don't know.
Oh, they never had
Yeah,
like an
there was one that we never got an interview
Yeah.
lined up. There was one that was seated.
One that was seated,
There was
one that was rejected, and one that we picked and was rejected.
Yep. And then there was
That's right.
one more that was interviewed that was not accepted. So you could go back to revisit the one that you weren't able to line up the interview with, or the one that you interviewed and did make the cut.
Or just wait for
I-
a
Just
whole
keep it
new.
open.
I say
Yeah.
keep it open.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think so too. That would be my.
Yep.
My thoughts at this point.
Keep it open.
So, because I mean, am I wrong in saying that our meetings in the past have not been broadcast, streamed?
They are.
They are.
I know they have been?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
So you need a motion on this?
I believe we do. It doesn't say action.
It says action item, but I don't know
Oh, there
what
it
that
is.
means.
Yes, action
Yeah, that does
item
mean-
means that we
Yeah.
would
Okay.
have a
I'll
motion.
make a motion that we leave it, keep it open.
I second that.
All right, it's been moved by Kevin and seconded by Laura, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No questions?
Oh, you can have a question if you want.
Before we
I
do
guess
the
I'm just
final
trying to move through here.
No, sorry, I don't wanna take too much time. I was just curious, why are we feeling like keeping it open instead of trying to make sure we're finding someone to fill that spot?
I think that's,
I thought
I
that's
think
what we are
keeping it
doing.
open means we're gonna continue to
Oh,
look.
okay, so
We're not like just gonna leave it.
Yeah,
Okay.
We're
republish too, so we
hoping
can
for
get more
more
applicants.
republish-
Okay,
hoping
thank
for
you.
We're
more
gonna
Sorry,
applicants.
I was
We're
like,
gonna-
why would we just leave something open?
No, we're
Right,
gonna ask the
throwing a
city
wider
clerk
net.
to push it out there
Okay,
again.
so we can re-interview. Thank you. I'm good now. I'm
So
ready to vote.
do you approve?
I do approve.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, because
I
I was
think
very
it
confused.
passes.
Yeah.
Okay, commissioner comments. Comments should be not to be related to any item currently before the commission or at item that may come before the commission in the foreseeable future, and should be limited to comments, not discussion. Do we have anything?
Not-
Are you the commissioner? Because we're
You're the
technically
commissioner.
No, you're
I'm-
commissioner.
I'm the staff.
Yeah,
staff, that's right.
I don't have anything.
Eventually I'll get there.
Okay, so then we're gonna move on to staff liaison comments.
I only have one quick comment in that Monday night, this council approved the fiber seal of 21st Street. So I'm really interested in how this project goes because I've already discussed there's no sub base or even a base on 21st Street. And so we're, I don't want to call it an experimental, but a newer technology that puts fiber, provides structure in the asphalt. But anytime you do a mill and overlay, so you mill out the pavement and put back new pavement, you're required to bring up the ADA pedestrian facilities up to standard. So we are starting that component next week. So they'll be going in and doing some in the street patching, because there's some rotten spots in the subgrade in everything. So they'll go in there and cut those patches out, compact the sub base or what there is, bring it up to grade and put a patch on it. But the bulk of what they'll be doing is the sidewalks and ADA ramps to bring those up to standards. You're not gonna hit the weather window to get the pavement done, because it's gotta stay above 60 degrees to pave that, so
That's
that will
what
be
that
next
was about.
spring.
So-
But-
Okay,
timing wise, it's great in that we'll get progress through the winter. It should wrap up in November. It'll close up, and then next June, once it starts warming up, it'll go fast, because it'll be night work. It'll be a big machine that goes up and mills out the rotten asphalt, then throws down the new asphalt and paint it, and it'll be new sidewalk, ADA, not all new sidewalk, but new ADA ramps, repair the patching, some stormwater improvements, and then new asphalt on 21st Street.
What's the fiber they're using? Because I've heard about it, but no one's ever said what the fiber is that's making it so strong.
I'm not quite, it's a unique, the vendor has come and talked to us a couple different times, and I'm not quite sure what the makeup is. It's similar to when you add the fiber to concrete, so it's just a microfiber, and so as it comes out the back of the asphalt truck, it's just a regular distributor with the asphalt, and it mixes and it injects, it's like a fiberglass kind of.
Is that what, yeah, I'm just fascinated, because I've heard good things
Yeah,
about it.
I'm,
It's
when
really-
they were showing us everything, and I've said before, they've not done it in Idaho. They've done it in Salt Lake City, they've done it in a lot of California, Arizona, and they've done it in various climates and elevations. So it should fit our need here. And they showed, they just paved, like there was one they did, I think it was in the California, Nevada desert, where there's just, the soils out there just shift so much because it's all sand and cobble. And they showed how they couldn't get even a sub base set because the whole area moves. But this stuff provides enough flex and support, so where it will hold the traffic up, but it'll flex as it you know.
Basically like flexes underneath with the environment, but not so much with the car driving. So it doesn't like you're gonna.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a flex seal.
it's a flex seal, you know, just throw it on the
Just
bucket.
went to Home Depot and put a big old flex seal right on the road.
And then along with that, so we were originally gonna try and do that all this year. Weather's catching up with us, so we were gonna do that with Fifth and Bryden. Fifth and Bryden is now just gonna be a regular mill and overlay, and it is scheduled to be done. We don't have a date, but roughly the second week of October. So if you frequent either Fifth Street going north or south, or Bryden, east or west, when you see the date, don't go there. It'll take a day.
That's my everyday route.
Yeah, and there's no, going back to our street network, there's no good way to detour traffic through basically one of the busiest intersections in town. And it's not a big enough job. I tried to twist their arm to say, can you do that at night? Can you do it? They said, we can't mob our crews for a tiny job like that. So we think we can start it on one day, and mill it all out. It won't take long to mill it, but then put back the asphalt, let it cool, and then hopefully early the next day, stripe it and then open it. So it may be 1 to 1.5 days of.
Is there a least, I don't know, we might not have this data, but is there like a least busy day of the week?
We were playing with that, cause you know, it's, you know, you got the dentist, you got 2 gas stations, and you've got so much residential crossing and them going,
When
using
you got
Bryden.
Seekins too, that comes out of there, and the airport.
In the airport, and we kicked it around and said, well,
Or
what a
it's
Friday,
Thursday.
cause the dentist office is only open half a day on Friday. Like, well, how about Friday? And it's, well, no, cause a lot of people work shift work, and so they're 410s, and so they're doing their errands on Friday. We can look at the data, but it's not gonna be
Too much of a.
too much of one thing, and I even considered to look and see if we can find like a school, you know, an administrative day where they are closed for a Friday or a Monday, and part of it is we're kind of at the mercy of the paver.
Yeah,
We're gonna
what
fit
they're
in their
willing to do with
schedule,
their
and
staff.
they know it's a lot of these paving jobs right now are they're trying to close out the season, and some of them are 2-3 weeks long, and we got 1.5 days, or not even one, and they're gonna, no, we'll put you in and we'll get you when you get you, so.
Okay, well, I'm sure people will just be happy to have it. I mean, they'll gripe at first probably,
Yeah,
but then once
yeah.
it's done.
And it will be a miserable day, and our phones will blow up, but
Yes.
the next day, it'll
It'll
be
be
open,
nice and smooth.
it'll be great.
And it won't be, you know.
As long as there's lots of PR out there and everybody knows.
Yeah,
then-
we've done direct mailers, and it's hard because we don't have the date right now, but we giving everybody
Heads up.
heads up, it'll be
When you do
around.
direct mailers, do you do that to CCI
We
and
did.
Seekins by chance? Because that's a
I
big
will
route for them.
check that
Okay,
and see.
those will be good ones to,
Yeah,
I'm not sure of the other businesses out there, but those are the
That's a
two I
good
can
idea.
think of.
Yeah.
That are pretty big, you
Yep,
know what I mean?
yep.
A lot of, you know, and they can go around obviously the other way, so it's not too
Yeah.
bad, but at least if they have the warning to not take that
Yeah,
way at all.
yeah.
Cut out the grumpiness.
Okay, so moving on.
Especially when they're working their
I'm done.
Future agenda items, Cassie, what was?
I'm trying to think of how to word it. So I think, for one, I definitely think we need to have some pictures, representations of what that actually looks like, to visuals. And it's more just an informational piece. I don't know if there's really anything we could, unless you were thinking of something we could do on it, but in
No,
my aspect
I
was
think
informational.
you hit it right on the note. It's an informational so that we understand the complexity of that roadway and what it's gonna take for the rehab of it, because as the director just explained, you can't just, you know, scrape it, and it's gonna have to be a total rehabilitation. And I don't think people really understand what that, when you're talking a major road like that, to be rehabilitated, and what that means from traffic, I mean, everything. And the dollar amount.
Yeah.
I mean, cause I guess my question, you know, when we get to that point is gonna be, how much longer do we have?
Yeah.
You know, cause that's, and now that we know what we know, you know, learning at that next meeting, you know, what it's all about, that's gonna be a big indicator going forward, especially for council. How do you prioritize and how do you do that funding?
Yeah, I really like that, because we talk about pavement condition index, PCIs, and so if I'm just saying, oh, yeah, it's terrible, it's a PCI of 45, you have no idea, but if I can show you, this is airway, its PCI is 40, and this is what it looks like, and then we can go into, a lot of these up there in the orchards have 20 to 30 foot right-of-ways, so you're never even gonna get sidewalks and full travel lanes in there, and so I can give them very specific examples of, this is what we've got.
I think it's
Because I think
great
that's the
topic.
biggest thing is the public kind of goes, well, why aren't they patching it, or why aren't they doing this? And it's like, well, there's obviously very big reasons why, and educated and lots of experienced staff that know why we can't do these things. So it's not like we're ignoring it, but these are the hurdles that we have, and we want to make sure it's done right.
And I think it ties into what the director had brought up, maybe 3 or 4 meetings ago when we talked about the stormwater and the storm drain system right in that area. So it's kind of all probably tied in
Yeah.
together.
Oh, gosh, if a pipe busted, no,
There's a.
it's already a bad road anyway. Anyway, so I guess we can word it as, informational, session on Brighton
21st?
21st.
It's 21st.
Sorry, excuse me, I was getting confused. Yes, 21st.
Do we have somebody taking notes on this, or are they just gonna go back?
Yep, Haley's
over
got it.
Okay, Haley's got it. That's right. She's in the background doing that.
I was wondering.
She's behind the curtain.
No one's taking
She's
any.
Oz today.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's Oz.
So she'll handle that wording for you.
Perfect.
And,
good.
then we need to adjourn. Anybody?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Cassie Foreman and seconded by Laura, and all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Opposed? None. All right, thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Forward to the next one.
And actually, some of these things that's in that 260 pages is stuff that we're looking at on the Envision 2040.
These transportation plans, the strategic, or not the strategic plan, the comp plan is looking at it in the planning realm, housing and business development and industry and all that.